I would like to invite Professor Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, the Dean of Jindal School of International Affairs, to share a special address. Professor Sreeram Chaulia needs no introduction, but as you all know, he anchors the Indian Diplomacy television show on India's national broadcaster, Doordarshan. Professor Chaulia is also a contributing editor to many eminent academic books and articles. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks. We always worried in today's era about student participation in events. So first of all, congratulations to all of you for taking out time and being here. Now, bigger congratulations to my colleague Professor Jyoti Patania. It's a very important work, and we are going to discuss this at great length. And she has now straddled the think tank world and come into academia, and frankly, this work I've read with great interest, and I think students, all of you should surely read it. I think we have copies in the library as well. The point is that it's a testament to her scholastic abilities and skills. It's not just about being a good writer. What you need to do actually for longer works like this is to be able to piece together a lot of information and to articulate it in a certain way that makes a core argument. So that sort of work of advanced research, this is one such. And in fact, those of you, our political science students especially, this is very, very important because it straddles the two domains of comparative politics and international relations. Generally, we treat these as interrelated but separate subfields. And sometimes people write books on topics like this which are entirely comparative politics, as in entirely focused on domestic developments of a country and similarities and differences with domestic developments in other countries. For example, in this case, military dominance of polity, there are studies about similar countries, Egypt, Turkey, she's mentioned this, Myanmar, Indonesia. These are countries which have had historically, like Pakistan, very military dominant. Although it's interesting that Turkey and Indonesia moved away in a more civilian control direction in the last 10, 15, 20 years and can no longer be called garrison states or deep states. But although new elites have come and perhaps there are civilian deep states also. But anyway, the point is, so you could do it purely comparatively, or you could do only a global study of how this impacts on the foreign policy of a country vis-a-vis others, meaning what we call the second image and the second image reversed in our IR theories. So what Professor Patania has done here is combine the two. That was my overwhelming feeling when I was reading it. It's not just about what this peculiar configuration in Pakistan's domestic politics, what it does internally to Pakistan's people and society and economy. It's also about what it means for us in India and for the world. So she's been able to combine the two, and that I think takes a lot of skill. And just to open the thoughts about the book before we invite our distinguished speakers and panelists, I thought that it covered a lot of ground and generated new terms and new diagrams that encapsulate the main arguments. It's very engaging in the sense it's not very text heavy. So every 2 or 3 pages you have actually an illustration of the ideas in a diagrammatic form. There are so many of these flowcharts and tables and constructs, cartoons, illustrations. So I think it's a very engaging, even for general readers, those who are not into theoretical constructs. I'm sure it will be of great value. Now, our neighbor, everyone has an opinion, but very few actually have in-depth knowledge about it. This is really a problem. We almost tend to believe that we know everything about Pakistan, but actually we don't. And there are a lot of new things that Dr. Patania has shown in the book. There's a whole chapter on a lesser known institution in their establishment, which is called ISPR. people think it is the same as ISI, but it's not. I mean, they're of course all part of the network of power that's ruling, but they have a separate profile with a separate set of functions to carry out hybrid war and information operations and all that. So that's something new that for which she has devoted a whole chapter and brought out how the psyops are now being carried out in a different level using the internet and social media. And also, of course, I think the big point that she makes is that this, unlike Turkey and Indonesia, where the military dominance in the polity has been progressively reduced, here Dr. Padania says at least for 2 decades or longer, she doesn't see this changing, this continuum. And she gives historical reasons for why this is so, and multiple analytical points about which explain the dominance of the military. And its repercussions are quite clear. She says they don't want reduction in hostilities with India, or they don't want reduction of interference in Afghanistan. So regionally, if we consider this as a troubled state, then the genesis of this, or the root of this, comes from this network of unconstitutional and unlawful authorities who have usurped a lot of power and influence and wealth. So I think in many ways she has peeled Professor Patani has peeled the layers of the onion. So you go to the very nucleus of the whole matter, and she has shown how these secretive but extremely dominant and exploitative elites operate in that country, and how they have also benefited from foreign support and encouragement through the history of Pakistan. The only thing I thought was missing was what was the role of the Gulf monarchies in propping up or in shaping this deep state, because you spoke about the US quite a bit, the US role, and of course they had encouraged military dictatorships for a long time in Pakistan, but perhaps more could be looked at from the Middle Eastern powers, and how they have had a very symbiotic and close links with this deep state. And lastly, political economy also, as she has covered a lot of ground, but perhaps less than was needed, because the economic levers and how they are controlled, Aisha Siddiqa and such people have written about it, and those, how they can be freed from the clutches of military control and restored to civilian. So that remains a fundamental debate. And now that the IMF 22nd or 23rd bailout has happened now, so it's a very fundamental question: what is the economic stake here? And again, it would have been helpful if there was a brief comparison with countries where the military's dominance over the economy has progressively been reduced, especially Indonesia and Turkey, where actually civilian elites are now taken over, and they cannot be called Praetorian states anymore. So all in all, I think it's essential reading for Indian students of politics and international relations, and it makes you wonder how much path dependency matters, because what she is showing this is that there is some historical institutionalism where the initial choices made around independence or even before independence then persist and get consolidated, and that's how you have this deep state control over a country of more than 200 million people. So but then circumstances do change. Yesterday evening, when the former Prime Minister was shot, the first thing people were talking about, I was on Republic TV, the first thing was, this must be the work of the deep state. Yeah. And and she has shown how succession of civilian leaders have initially climbed to the top on the coattails of the military, and then have been backstabbed by them. So this is like a repeat loop kind of a story that keeps getting iterated, and they're not able to break out of this loop. See, and that's the fundamental challenge, and which of course generates a lot of hostility and insecurity in the region, across South Asia and beyond. So it's quite refreshing to see this kind of work, and I do believe that it will add great value. And of course, we'll hear from our distinguished panelists about this.